First up, by far the news of the day, Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court nomination. It remains in suspended animation tonight, thanks, as you well know, to allegations that he assaulted a psychology professor called Christine Blasey Ford some 36 years ago, while both of them were still in high school. Despite blanket media coverage, the basic details of that story remain murky. Ford has not said when or where it happened precisely. She has said she didn't tell a soul about it for 3 decades. There are significant inconsistencies in her account, but we have never doubted Ford's sincerity, and we have never questioned her motives. And unless we learn new facts that give us reason to, we won't do that. We give her every benefit of every doubt. But there's another side to this story as well. Brett Kavanaugh, he's also got a family and a career and a reputation, and all have been gravely damaged by these claims. Now, Democrats could have helped clear this up weeks ago if they had asked Kavanaugh about Ford's story as he sat before them for days in the U.S. Senate. That's what hearings are for. But they didn't do that. Instead, they hid what they knew in order to cause maximum political damage. Now, in the process, they overturned his life, but they also overturned Christine Ford's life. She had asked to remain anonymous. Democrats betrayed her, and they dragged her into the public eye. Now Ford says she's had to leave her home because of threats. Democrats in the Senate did that purely for partisan advantage, and you should keep that in mind the next time they lecture you about how much they care about women. So what happens next? Well, 36 hours ago, Democrats were adamant that Ford get a hearing on Capitol Hill. The nomination couldn't move forward until she did, they told us. It's only fair. Now they are saying precisely the opposite of that. Watch Hawaii Senator Mazie Hirono explain that having Ford testify before the Senate would itself constitute a form of abuse.
I am totally disappointed that all these people who have come forward to say, oh, we should hear from her, and now that she's expecting a modicum of fairness so she's not re-victimized, are now saying, well, if she doesn't want to testify, we should just go ahead. That is additional callousness from my colleagues that I am totally appalled by.
They're trying to set up a he said, she said scenario and bully her into either testifying on Monday or not being heard at all.
These people in Congress right now in that Senate Judiciary Committee, these white men, old, by the way, are not protecting women. They're protecting a man who is probably guilty.
Did you catch that last part? Not just men, but old white men. The worst kind, the kind who should be punished just for who they are. If nothing else, the story has opened a window into how many on the left really think. It's a tribal worldview where people are not regarded as individuals with distinct personalities and beliefs and aspirations, but instead as faceless members of ethnic blocs sorted by genes. It's a world where some people are inherently good and some are inherently bad. It's a place where how you're born determines what you're worth. That's what the left now believes. They say so all the time. But remember, you're the Nazi here, so shut up. Well, you either find this brand of hard identity politics disgusting, or you don't. Hillary Clinton is drawn to it like a bear to donuts. She came out of semi-retirement last night to weigh in at length on cable news. Here's how she said the Trump administration ought to respond to the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. Watch.
The White House could answer it very quickly by asking the FBI to reopen its background check and to take into account the accusation that's been made and to gather the evidence about what can be known. What I think the White House and the Republicans on the committee are trying to do is, basically put her in the dock and try to rush this through.
Now, just pause for a minute and savor this. Imagine you're Hillary Clinton. Imagine saying something like that. You'd have to believe that the internet doesn't exist, that there was no record at all of anything you had ever said in public about claims of sexual abuse. Well, as it happens, we have access to the internet here, as well as a pretty long memory. Hillary Clinton has said an awful lot about sexual assault allegations, credible allegations, including of rape, all of them aimed at her husband, Bill, from many women over many years. Hillary sounded a lot different then, like a totally different person. Of course, she was fighting to keep political power, and that gave her another perspective. Watch as Hillary Clinton dismisses and belittles the claims of female abuse survivors.
We're right in the middle of a rather vigorous feeding frenzy right now, and people are saying all kinds of things and putting out rumor and innuendo. It's just a very unfortunate turn of events that we are using the criminal justice system to try to achieve political ends in this country. And I just think that a lot of this is deliberately designed to sensationalize charges against my husband because everything else they've tried has failed. The great story here, for anybody willing to find it and write about it and explain it, is this vast right-wing conspiracy that has been conspiring against my husband since the day he announced for president.
Oh, how times have changed. One thing that has not changed is the torrent of propaganda from the left. Whenever their control of this country is challenged, they will say literally anything. Jim Sciutto, for example, a former Obama appointee now posing as a journalist over at CNN, summed up today's news this way, quote, "The offer to Christina Blasey Ford is blunt. Testify in public 6 days from now while under death threats, or your allegation will be ignored in the confirmation of a SCOTUS nominee." In other words, says Jim Sciutto, Republicans are jeopardizing Ford's life by asking her to tell her story. Not only is this overwrought and dumb, it's factually wrong. Republicans want Ford to testify because they want to get this over with and vote. That's what you do in a democracy. They've even offered to interview her privately in California. Senator Grassley sent a letter to that effect just recently. Democrats oppose that, of course. They like to ride this story into November and beyond. Instead, the left is calling for an FBI investigation. The FBI wants nothing to do with any of this, as we reported on this show last night. So Democrats are now demanding that Trump order the FBI to investigate the story. But investigate what exactly? Where would you start? Ford cannot even state definitively what year this supposedly happened. And by the way, why would the FBI be in charge of the investigation? Nobody's even alleged a federal crime here. If you really wanted justice in this case, you would bring it to the police in Maryland. That's a state with no statute of limitations on sex crimes. How would that end? Well, Ford says Kavanaugh was a juvenile at the time. If evidence of his guilt emerged, would he be tried as a minor? Would his record be sealed afterwards so it wouldn't overshadow his life? If those sound like absurd questions, that's because this whole thing is absurd. The Democrats don't care about Christine Ford. If they did, they wouldn't have outed her in the first place. They care about keeping a Republican off the court, which is fine. But if that's the case, then make the case for why Kavanaugh's ideas are wrong. But don't personally destroy a man simply because he's in the way. That's what they're doing, and the rest of us should stop playing along and say it out loud. Christy Setzer is president of New Heights Communication, and she joins us tonight. Christy, thanks a lot for coming on. So just first to the question of who really cares about Christine Ford. If you really cared about her personally, why would you violate her request to remain anonymous, as Democrats did?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to understand, to take a step back and understand why we're talking about her at all, because we're trying to get a window into who Brett Kavanaugh is as a person, both his judicial views, but also his sense of morality, because obviously as the person who's going to sit on the highest court in the land, he's going to be the arbiter of right and wrong for every man, woman, and child in this country, right? So I think that she has something to say about his sense of morals, just as, you know, the stories that we heard about how he is the coach of
I'm not denying that. I don't think that's a
girls'
stupid
basketball team.
I don't think it's a stupid point at all.
Yeah.
But it doesn't obscure the point that this is being done in her name. We need to bring justice to her. We need to take her seriously as a woman and a survivor of this alleged attack. She asked for anonymity, and Democrats outed her, and now she's had to leave her home. So how can you say you care about Christine Ford if you betray her wishes and destroy her life, which they did?
She did ultimately decide to come forward, in part because
after they leaked the letter.
After journalists sort of, you know, finding out that she was sort of attached to this, et cetera. I'm not sure. Obviously,
because Democrats
these
in the
things have a
Senate,
tendency
we are sure,
to get out.
No, we are sure. We're sure because the journalists have told us, and because there's no other way. Democrats in the Congress leaked that. They leaked her identity to journalists. So how can you do that and say you care about her?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that, again, she's willing to tell her story. She initially wanted it to be one that she told privately. Now she's said that she's quite happy to tell it publicly.
Are you bothered by that, though? I mean, if a survivor says, please keep me anonymous, but you betray her for political reasons, you think that's okay?
What I'm a little bit more bothered by is the idea that she is now facing death threats from people who don't want her to go and tell her story against Brett Kavanaugh. She's scheduled to, in a matter of a few days, have to get in front of the entire country, probably on a dais next to the person that she says raped her, and tell her story all over again. That to me seems pretty upsetting.
As a factual matter, she's not claiming anyone raped her. A.
She's saying it was attempted. That's correct.
Okay. She's not saying it was attempted. She said that it could have evolved into that.
Okay.
Okay. B. She's not being asked to testify in public or next to Brett Kavanaugh. Senator Grassley sent a letter saying, we will send investigators, staffers out to California to speak with you in private. You've made an allegation. Even though you didn't want your name attached, Democrats put your name to it. So now it is out there. And why wouldn't you tell your story? We're asking to hear your story, and that is somehow abuse? How does that work?
I think she's going to tell her story. Again, I think all that they are asking for is, one, a little bit of time for her to sort of get comfortable with the idea of being not just thrust in the national spotlight, which has been happening to her for a while now, but to be this linchpin of this entire pitched battle, right?
I don't
Which
understand.
I think would be very
hold
upsetting.
on. This is not a child. This is a woman in her 50s with a PhD. Okay? So I treat her as an adult because I don't patronize women. I'm honestly confused as to how it would somehow violate her dignity or safety to interview her in private to get the full story. Isn't that what we say we want? But we don't want that because this isn't about her or justice.
It's
about stopping a Supreme Court. So what's the answer?
What we're talking about.
What do you mean? It's definitely been out. It's in print.
Right. They've said that they can do this potentially in different ways. What they want to do, though, is to have this hearing on Monday and then get to a vote.
That is not.
As quick as
I'm sorry. Just as a factual matter, Senator Grassley, who's in charge of this, has a letter in which she said, "Look, we want to hear your story. Period." Now, what they really want, I have no idea because I'm not God. But what they're saying they want in public is, we will send someone out to talk to you. Why in the world would she turn that down?
Because they're not entirely interested in really hearing that story. If we're going to be totally
clear, why
clear
wouldn't she tell her story? Hold on. At some point, I'm sorry. I've really tried to give every benefit of every doubt to this woman, who I've heard, as I said 9 times, is a nice person. But she's accused someone of sexual assault. She has obligations here, too, and one is to explain herself. It's not all about her. It's also about Brett Kavanaugh and his wife and his children.
By the way, and she has. She has released.
Really?
Yes, she has released notes from her therapist. She wrote, sort of a letter about it at the time. She has said that.
So we've heard all we need to hear from her? Is that what you're saying?
Possibly, again, because she is not the one on trial, Tucker.
I'm not putting her on trial. Her allegations are putting a man who says he is innocent on trial.
No, they are not. He is asking for an enormous promotion. Again, that is what he's looking for.
This is a matter not about the Supreme Court. I know you guys don't care at all about justice or the individual. It's all about power. That's obvious. But in this case, you have a man who's a father to kids. I don't know what happened. I know she's accused him of this. Doesn't she have an obligation to explain herself? How does she not? That's the linchpin of our justice system, facing your accuser and hearing the whole story, not just throwing bits out there to wreck your life.
Again, she has submitted a letter. She's done these things. The next question that they have is, why can't there be an FBI investigation, just like there was actually in
on
Hill,
what grounds?
Clarence
Why does the FBI have why not a state of Maryland investigation?
Because if you are a U.S. senator, you're probably a lot of things, but you're probably not a established prosecutor or investigator or whatever. You don't know how to get to the truth.
Why wouldn't the Bethesda police investigate? Why the FBI has no jurisdiction here? This is so bizarre.
A number of senators have basically said outright, well, I'm going to listen to her story and then decide what I think happened. Well, you're not going to be able to get to the bottom of it after 35 years.
Leaving aside what we can know about a story that she can't explain, I'm not attacking her. She can't explain when or where it happened. Again, not attacking her. I'm noting the facts, which are the only basis upon which we make judgments in cases like this. Not whether she's a woman or he's white or these insane identity politics criteria that the left is throwing out. What are the facts? And she's told us what she says she knows of the facts. And based on that, how will we know?
Right. So 73% of sexual assault victims do not come forward. And this is sort of why, because they understand that if they do come and tell their story, there's going to be a presumption of that they did something wrong, that they are trying to take a man's career down.
I'm not presuming that.
Whatever, right? And there's a reason why.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not presuming anything. I'm saying you make an allegation of a crime, don't you have an obligation to explain what you mean? I'm missing something. If I say you embezzled money from me, Christy embezzled money from me, I'm not going to tell you any details. You would say rightly, hey, man, you just accused me of a felony.
Tucker, she has explained her story to many people at this point. She told her story, obviously, to her husband, probably after the fact. She told it to her therapist. She told it to her lawyers repeatedly. She told it to Anna Eshoo. She told it to, I believe, to Dianne Feinstein. Right? She's told it many, many times.
Then why not have the Bethesda police invest? I'm serious. If you really care about finding out what happened, what does the FBI have to do with this, and where's the jurisdiction for them to do it?
Yeah, I mean, again, because the FBI has already conducted an extensive background investigation into Brett Kavanaugh.
That's not a criminal investigation.
Yeah, that's correct, but it's probably the best means by which to expand the investigation.
Last question, because I'm being told we're out of time repeatedly. Do you think she should participate in the FBI investigation, or has she said enough to her therapist? I mean, we're in crazy town now, but I just want to know, like, did she have an obligation?
That is 1,000% up to her. She has done more than she has.
No, it's not. It's not up to her. You can't allege a felony and then not explain yourself. That's not up to her. I've tried really hard to be sensitive. Every American citizen who alleges a crime against another citizen has an obligation to explain him or herself. That's justice.
At this point, all she's trying to do is shed light on her experience with this man. It's one view.
It's one view? You're a rapist. Okay, just one view. All right. Thank you.